Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for coming tonight. It is a little bit past 7:30 on Monday, May 21st, and this is the regular meeting of Lakewood City Council. If you'll be so kind as to rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Now please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. Madam Clerk?
Anderson? Present. Bullock? Here. George?
Yep.
Litton?
Here.
O'Leary?
Here.
O'Malley?
Here.
Rader?
Here.
Reading and disposal of the minutes of the special meeting of council held April 23rd, 2018.
Move to dispose of the minutes of April 23rd, 2018 without necessity of a reading. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to dispose without reading? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes.
Reading and disposal of the minutes of the special meeting of council held April 30th, 2018.
Move to defer. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to defer? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes.
Reading and disposal of the minutes of the regular meeting of council held May 7th, 2018.
Move to defer.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to defer those minutes? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes. And now, as we enter our regular docket, without the objection of council, I would like to move item number 8, which is the Lakewood Heritage Advisory Board Historic Home Awards presentation, to the top of our agenda this evening. Hearing no objection, Lakewood Heritage Advisory Board members, Mr. Sika, please proceed. Also, I just want to note that in addition to the beautiful home awards, this is one of my other favorite nights of the year as far as council goes. So,
okay, great, thank you. Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to the 17th Annual Historic Preservation Awards presented by the City of Lakewood Heritage Advisory Board. I'm Rick Sika, Chair of the Heritage Advisory Board. And LHAB, on behalf of the administration and council, as well as our other appointing authorities, the Lakewood Historical Society and the Chamber of Commerce, would like to thank the building owners, their architects, and contractors who respect the architecture, design, and craftsmanship of their buildings, while at the same time keeping them as places to raise a family, create jobs, and provide services to the community. We have a couple of other LHAB members with us tonight, Frank Scalish and Stephen Julis. The other members of the board are Jason Shackner, Peter Ketter, Hillary Schickler, and Jeff Weber. So what I'd like to do is present a short set of images first, then have the recipients come up to receive their certificates, and we can finish with a group photo. So we are pleased to note that this year we have 5 recipients, including 1 in each of the 4 council wards, plus 1 extra in Ward 1. So, on to the awards. This is National Historic Preservation Month, sponsored by the National Trust for Historic Preservation. So as part of the Lakewood activities this year, there are these presentations tonight, as well as Lakewood Alive's Knowing Your Home educational series, and some of their upcoming sessions include exterior painting, hands-on window repair, electrical and plumbing systems, and weatherization basics. So the 17th Annual Awards. So in the category of commercial revitalization, 12301 Madison Avenue. This building was built in 1915 and constructed with 2 retail spaces and 6 apartments. Slovenian immigrants Michael and Veronica Terza bought the lot and had the building constructed. One of their early tenants was Ann Kusera, Michael's sister, who ran a confectionery. The couple lived in one of the apartments in the building until her death in 1949 and his in 1956. During the 50s and 60s, one of their sons, operated the Lark Ridge Tavern. The current owner is only the 4th owner in the building's history, and he renamed the building the Veronica in honor of the original owners. This is a before photo in 2015. The original storefronts were found behind the lowered ceilings, and the fake rock adhered to the plywood when this was the corner pub. And this is the first building in Lakewood to use both the federal and historic tax credit programs combined. The work included storefront and apartment rehabilitation. Also in the category of commercial revitalization, 14319 Madison. Okay, we're going to take a moment, do the award, then we're going to explain this building, and everybody will know it for once and for all what this is doing there in the middle of that block. So this was built in 1953. The building was originally at 14235 Madison. So that's one whole block to the east, just west of where Fridrich Moving and Storage is. There's a gas station there now that was built in the 60s. So it was built as a frozen dessert stand, and it was moved to this location in 1960. So that's what it looked like before the current renovation. And the new owners have included a new entrance door. The windows slide open across the front, and painting, as well as their unique neon signage. So this is the early 1950s. This is where the building ended up. This is where the building started. This is Fridrich. So in 1953, the original tenant was Cream King. Building cost $10,000. 54, it becomes the DC Drive-In, which was a restaurant and car service, and there's a want ad for their car hops. In 1956, it became a florist. And in 1957, Austin Ward moved his insurance business into the building. The next year, he purchased the 40 by 40-foot space where the building is now and moved the 31 by 27-foot building there in 1960 and put it on the new foundation. Sounds like a guy thing, right? Well, you got 40 feet between the other walls of these buildings. Sure, we'll slide in a 31-foot wide building and we'll put it on the new foundation. Then it ended up being a gas station at the former site. In 1964, Oster Matsuki bought the building, and he had moved his barbershop from the southeast corner of Warren and Madison, where the Sherwin-Williams is now, where there was a gas station that went in the 60s. There's a pattern here about gas stations. And for over 15 years, he operated Oscar's barbershop. Now, he was best known for his window display of a 6-foot human hair Christmas tree, using the cut hair from everybody involved, the blonde, black, red, gray, all sorts of colors. He twisted and curled it together and put lights and ornaments on it. And then he added a new layer of hair every year. And see, people still remembered this 10 years later. Now, everybody has either one or two reactions. Either this is really cool or this is terrible and who would do this, right? So anyhow, that's his claim to fame at that location.
Where is that tree today?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, at least when Marcia winced, I said, well, it's probably clean hair. He washed it first, but anyhow. Moving on, also in commercial revitalization. 156-4149 Madison Avenue, 1925 building, designed by Cleveland architect Arthur Yost, who also designed other homes and commercial buildings in Cleveland and Lakewood during the teens and the 20s. This was before, so the storefront details have been covered and the windows were already replaced once in the building. So now another set replacement windows went in, but with transoms, looks much more like in keeping with early 20th century design, as well as the awnings and the signage that they did. In the category of new garage construction, 17705 Riverway. So the new attached garage was built in two sections to make the size of the addition appear smaller. The driveway is on the side street. This is what it looked like before with just a small single-car garage built in 1923. This is the front of the house, a bungalow with, and it's all of the roof line and the eaves and the brackets for the new 3-car garage. They made it all blend together with the original design, and it's actually a good fit for the property. And finally, in the category of rehabilitation, 1595 Riverside Drive. This is at the corner of Franklin, so it's just south of West Clifton. Built in 1923, a $20,000 house built by a construction company owner for his family. And from the 1940s into the 80s, Robert and Gladys McCafferty owned the house, and he was a prominent member of the medical staff of St. John's Hospital when it was located on Cleveland's near west side. So the work on the house has included slate roof repair, partial replacement of the copper gutters with copper, front step replacement, the new garage, driveway, patio, fencing, and landscaping. And when you're in the property, one of the surprises is that on the one side of the garage, they have a built-in chimney and an outdoor fireplace facing the patio area. And they did a really good job with the garage, blending the mixed colors of brick in with the original house and the details along the roof line as well. And those are this year's awards. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess we'll, do you want to call up the
Sure,
members?
yeah, and then we can do
sure.
a group photo just right over there. 12301 Madison Avenue, Frank Scalish. Just want to go over in front of that table. 14319 Madison Avenue, Emily Flamos and John Sweeney. One 564149 Madison Avenue, Marty Velasco. I'm not sure he's here. Okay, great, no problem. And 17705 Riverway, Chris Bartol. Great, so if anyone else would like to participate in the group photo,
Absolutely.
that's the. Rick, why don't we do it right here? Okay, well, on the side up front, wherever you'd like. I don't know. They seem to be split between front and side. So.
Hey guys, why don't you come here? It's a little less.
Yeah, sure. That makes sense. Okay. Yeah.
All right. Tristan, you gotta move your head over a little. Yeah, right next to Tom. Okay, there we go. All right, 1, 2, 3. And 1, 2, 3. One more. All right, great.
Thank you. We'll see you in 2019 with the 18th annual.
Thank you very much. Already looking forward to it. For posterity, move to receive and file that communication.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to receive and file? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes. And at this time, I'd like to do something a little bit unconventional, which is we do have someone signed up for public comment. Actually, several people signed up for public comment, and they have a bedtime, I'm told. I know I don't want to ruin the fun, but yes, fair enough. Council members also have bedtimes, but if there's no objection, what I'd like to do at this point in time is recognize Luke, Lena, and Michael, who are here to talk about school safety. So welcome, Luke, Lena, and Michael.
Hi, my name is Luke Burke, this is Lena, and this is Michael. Since I've been in kindergarten, I've been hearing about the slaughter of our children in schools, churches, malls, and inside our homes due to gun violence. On an average day, 7 children and teens die to guns. 7 children times 365 days in a year is 2,555 children a year killed with guns. For the last couple of months, I've been hearing about the school shooting in Parkland, Florida. I realized that when students at Parkland said never again, I knew I could say it too. I knew I could say it without being afraid to get in trouble. But I noticed that they did many things to express their feelings on this serious matter. Some schools led walkouts. The 5th grade at my school did because we care. We care that we are safe. And the little kids in kindergarten and 1st and 2nd grade are too. It took me and my other friends 2 whole months to get a walkout set up. We went to meetings and talked with classmates. The day after the Parkland shooting, me and my friend Pauline Zacabe went to the principal's office to discuss a walkout. We planned to walk out on February 16th, but did not end up happening. We tried another on March 14th. This one also did not end up happening. We finally got one in on April 20th.
We are not going to let people speak for us if they don't fight with us. Me and others did not give up on when we wanted a walkout. We needed to show we cared, and this is why we needed a walkout. But the point is, we joined the fight, and you all can too, by teaching children how to get into real lockdown procedures in a small period of time in a case of if a real shooter gets inside of our schools. Me and many other friends agree that at all schools in the Lakewood district should have practice a drill 2 times a month instead of 1. So then students understand more of what you need to do if there is an active shooter. Also, many schools are fundraising money to buy bulletproof entrances. Don't we have a fund for safety issues? And if we don't, then we need one. These shootings are not acceptable. There was a shooting in Santa Fe High School in Texas that just occurred this past Friday, when 8 students were killed and 2 staff members. This weekend, 2 also died. We have a problem and our elected officials are too afraid to admit it. We have an opportunity to be an amazing generation. Why lose this great opportunity?
Now we just ask for one more thing. When any person enters a school building, they should be asked to state their name and the reason they are in the building. The reason we think that this is necessary is because on Tuesday, an adult walked in the school. This past Tuesday, an adult walked in the school without even saying his name. We were lucky he was just picking up his daughter from school, but it could have been a lot worse. For just a moment, I would like you to all look at this paper my brother is going to hand out in front. This paper is going to tell you what website you can go to so you can purchase bulletproof entrances to get into so that an active shooter cannot shoot through the entrances to get into school. Me and other 5th graders think that this is a necessary plan and that it can save lives. We would love to be connected to the Lakewood City Schools Department to bring up these plans. Now finally, I would like to end with saying, if we could be a great community, then why don't we be? Thank you for your time.
Thank you guys so very, very much. That was very moving, and I would also note for the record that you guys are great public speakers, seriously. There are people who come up all the time and have much more difficulty with public speaking than you guys do, so I really want to commend you guys on that and commend you on all your hard work putting that together, because that was a really great message. And I know that it's one we all take to heart. Just a couple of weeks ago, we had a resolution that this council passed signifying, this council's desire to move forward with meaningful gun reform and see the state move forward with meaningful gun reform. And I know that we've also, in the recent weeks, had many community conversations, both privately and also publicly, particularly the community conversation that the mayor attended along with members of the school board and the city schools and our police department as well. Mayor, care to comment?
Thanks, President O'Leary, members of council. Thank you, citizens and actually neighbors. On September 27th of this year, under Chief Malley's leadership, there will be a training session for parents of our schools. And I know that Chief Malley and his staff are working hard to create a training session for our students. And the challenge there is to recognize what is age appropriate. Obviously, a high school person receives and deals with training differently than an 8 or 10-year-old. So that's a particular challenge. Others have figured a way to do it, so we look forward to offering that training as they suggest to our students in 2018-19 school year. Chief Malley, do you have anything more you'd like to add there?
Mr. President.
Yes, Vice President Anderson.
Well, thank you for the comments. Is it too much to ask if I request that you 3 come back up to the microphones for just a moment? Thank Thank you. Remind me what school you all attend.
Emerson Elementary.
You're at Emerson. All right, very good. And your principal's name is?
Mrs. Letty.
And what was the date of your walkout?
April 20th.
Do you remember how many students participated with you all?
Well, there was 3/4 of the grade. There was a permission slip that was sent home, and then some that brought it home. Some parents signed it and said that they didn't want their kids participating.
But even the folks that, or the youngsters that didn't participate, they knew what was going on, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that the ones that did participate, they got a good idea of why they were coming outside and the bigger issue that's involved?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that something that you provided them with information, or was there a speaker?
Yeah, we did something basically like a wax museum where a group of students wrote essays, and then people could come up to you and listen to what you have to say.
What do you think the next step? Do you guys have another idea in mind?
So we came here, and our next step maybe is being connected to the Lakewood City Schools Department to get theirs, because their opinion on what we sort of think.
So thank you for that. And I know that the police department here in Lakewood, they do a lot of active shooter drills with different schools, primarily with the high school, et cetera. Chief Malley, if it's not so much to ask, is there a history of doing similar types of drills at the elementary schools, and Emerson in particular? Do you remember any recent drills of any type for student safety at Emerson?
All the teachers in the district go through the active shooter training, and then, as the mayor just talked about, we're going to looking to do it this fall with the elementary school students as well, but just a different type of training than what we do at the high school.
So that leads me to my last question for you three. Would you three be able to ask all the teachers in a building whether or not they've gone through the active trainer shooting? And if not, just sort of let them know that there's an opportunity for them to get some training as to how they might be able to handle? Do you have an idea whether or not your teacher's been through the active shooter training?
Well, when we went to a meeting with our teachers, it was our principal and a couple of our 5th grade teachers. They told us that they all have been through training. And then we actually asked a couple other teachers. They all said that they went through training.
Very good. Do you feel confident that they would know what to do if there's a challenging situation at your school?
Yes, but we still agree that that at the appropriate age, children should also 5th graders should maybe learn more of what to do. And one thing that we also wanted to do is was to get lockdowns 2 times a month instead of 1, because a lot of kids don't feel like are absent one of those days or don't feel comfortable with 1.
So a little bit more frequency. Not yet. All right. Do you have something that you wanted to add, young guy?
Yeah, and well, during our lockdowns, what we do is we hide in a corner, but what they say is what we're supposed to do usually, teachers are saying this, is put desk in front of the door, and I don't get why they're telling us this if we're not even practicing it. Why wait until it really happens to know really what to do? Because they tell us to go in a corner on a practice one, but if a real one happens, they say to do something different, and then when they say that they're teaching us to go into lockdown procedures, I don't think we're really learning what we need to do, because if one does happen, then we'll go to a corner, but we won't push stuff in the door.
I'll bet each of you could understand why a teacher might not want to dismantle the classroom to do the drill the way it's meant to be done, but maybe once or twice a year to actually do it.
Yeah.
Might not be a bad idea.
Yeah, just once or twice.
Just so kids are prepared, because it just, it just sprung on you. It's never
Well, thank you for taking this issue on, and it saddens me that you all even have to think about issues of school violence when you go to school. But thank you for being here tonight, and thank you for sort of going back and forth with some of my questions. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman O'Malley?
Thank you very much for being here tonight again as well. I just want to say again what the council president said just very, very impressed with how well-spoken you are, how intelligently you've laid these issues out for us. These are Ward 4 residents, by the way, Mr. President, I'm proud to say. As you could clearly tell by how smart they are. You know, it really is sad that you even have to come here and ask your elected officials to do these things. They should be, you know, this is a problem that is avoidable. It's a problem that hopefully a generation from now or sooner we'll be looking back on this and thinking and realizing that it's a problem that we were able to solve. And we were able to solve it because people like you were brave enough to step up and be active and do the right thing. So thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. Councilman Litton.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to thank you as well for coming, to also mention that you were very well spoken, but that your timing is the right time. You were very thoughtful about how you presented, and I also want to, you know, commend your parents for their role in helping you be here as well, because, you know, I assume you didn't walk, for one, but you know, very walkable community. It may have happened. But I just, you know, as a community, I'm glad that we're all coming together, parents, students alike, about a very important issue. And Ward 3 is right across the street, so I'm sure that had something to do with it as well.
Thank you. Thanks all for that again, and we'll now resume our regular docket with item number 1. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Item 1, Committee of the Whole Report regarding May 14th, 2018 and May 21st, 2018 committee meetings.
Move to receive and file the Committee of the Whole reports and move to receive and file the May 14th, 2018 Committee of the Whole report and move to defer the report of tonight's meeting, May 21st.
Second.
A motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to approve the meetings of, or the minutes rather, of the report rather of May 14th and to defer the report with respect to tonight's meeting, the 21st? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 2, Resolution 9-00018, a resolution approving a street encroachment permit pursuant to Section 90118 of the Codified Ordinances in favor of the Cleveland Clinic Foundation in furtherance of the approval site plan for the permittee's Family Health Center.
Thank you. As is noted in my correspondence on May 14th Committee of the Whole report, Committee of the Whole did recommend this for adoption this evening. And I believe we have, so I would correspondingly move to adopt. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to adopt? Councilman Rader.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to get a follow-up from either Director Kevin Butler or Bryce Sylvester on our meeting we had this past week about this ordinance. Driving past, I noticed that it's mostly complete, this build out into the street, and I just wanted to and you kind of answered my questions before the meeting, but I kind of want to put it on record, like, well, what exactly are we doing here sort of retroactively, and you know, what is the timing, how did this kind of come about, and lay out when ABR and planning sort of met about this and made these decisions sort of as it relates to the encroachment into the bell.
Hello, Director Butler.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Councilman Rader, for the good questions. Director Sylvester might be able to firm up some of the dates, but I do know that ABR began to meet on the site plan for the new Family Health Center in 2016, and I believe it was those meetings began maybe in the summer of 2016. Those meetings were all public, and they were only meetings of the Architectural Board Review, not Planning Commission. So we should be clear on that. Ultimately, that site plan was approved in, I think, January of 2017. So it was better than half a year, I'd say, for that public process to work its way out. And as we explained in committee, originally the Family Health Center was proposed to be on the site of the existing hospital. We were all convinced, frankly, that the better approach would be to move it across the street to the southwestern corner of Bell and Detroit. And when that happened, in order to fit the design onto the site and ensure adequate parking and valet services, et cetera, which is what the clinic is inclined to do, and to meet the city's objectives, the city encouraged the clinic to actually shrink Bell Avenue by using that leftmost lane, westernmost lane, as a valet drop-off and pickup zone. So ABR ultimately approved that after, I'm sure, lots of public deliberation, and so at that point, the city began the process of fulfilling its obligations under the master agreement to ensure that we sought and assisted the clinic in receiving all the necessary city approvals for the Family Health Center site. That's an explicit obligation of ours in the master agreement. What I didn't think of then, and I, of course, regret that now, is that I think to create a better record of the clinic's use of the street property, we could pass legislation on the council docket that would incorporate that Family Health Center design that was approved by the Architectural Board of Review, hence this legislation. Now, 90118 is the ordinance under which this resolution is created. And specifically, it says that no person shall erect, place, or cause to be erected or placed or permit to remain any building, structure, or device of any nature on any street within the city, except with the consent of the owner thereof. Oftentimes what that means is that the adjacent property owner has a legal description for their property that actually goes into the center line of the street. And so I think what this language in 90118 says is you've got to make sure that whoever owns the fee simple parcel over which the city has street access has to approve of what's going on to that site. And of course, that would be the Cleveland Clinic in this instance. They certainly approve of it. And also, no person shall do that except where permitted by the statutes of the state and the ordinances of the city, including but not limited to zoning provisions. I have read that to mean in order to create a better public record of the clinic's use of this street property for the future, we should do legislation and make sure that it's on the books and recorded as legislation and approved by City Council, so that anyone who's wondering why that strip of land that previously had been roadway is now a drive-up valet drop-off and pickup center, why it's there, can look to the legislation to find that out. I think that's the ideal way of doing it. Now, it could be what we call around here belts and suspenders, which is an unnecessary piece of legislation because that code section doesn't really fit that situation perfectly. And the ABR approved it, and the master agreement requires it, and we asked for it, frankly, back in 2016. But I thought, let's get a piece of legislation on. And it took us, frankly, until now to think of it and get it on. So that should explain the difference between the approval period in front of ABR and the period we're now approving this piece of legislation.
Good, thank you so much. So it's not the clinic jumping the gun, is it? This is just they're following sort of the protocol that we laid out a long time ago via the master agreement and ABR and other mechanisms.
Correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, it really has nothing to do with the clinic jumping the gun. In fact, we've permitted since ABR's approval, we've issued permits out of the building department to have them construct the facility that was approved by ABR.
Got it.
They're just following those permits.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you. There's an interesting wrinkle here, which is that I have a public comment sign-in sheet, which is obviously not the docket comment sign-in sheet, but Mr. Graham has indicated on the public comment sign-in sheet that the subject of his comments is item 2. So, Mr. Graham, would you prefer to speak now or prefer to reserve your time until the public comment at the end?
Well, I
I disagree with the propriety of that blocking off street that is needed for use of the people who are driving around there. At the present time, you've got the temporary barriers there that that are something temporary for the purpose of enabling the construction that was going on. But it would seem to me, from what I understand is being put in there, is that you're going to be losing a lane of traffic that previously had enabled a left-hand turn lane for people going north on the street, on Bell Avenue, that is. And that is a safety issue, in my opinion, and it really doesn't benefit the citizens at large in the city to have lanes blocked off. It's sort of like the part of Clifton where you're heading to the bridge going into Rocky River, and you have it partitioned off, a very big safety factor, in my opinion. In the dark, people who are not familiar with their driving along are in danger of hitting another vehicle or the barriers there. It serves no good function. There's a short period of space where the barriers are in place, and then at the other end of it, you're back to the same two lanes. It serves no good purpose. I don't know how that came about, that was done, but this with the hospital is in the same situation. You are putting in you're taking away valuable driving space that are designed for safety when you have a separate lane to let left-hand turn cars stop there. So I disagree totally with that. I think it's a safety factor, a bad factor. Thank you.
Thank you. I just, for some clarity, I think, and we had talked about this when we met on this subject last week, but my understanding is that currently, or I should say perhaps previously, there had been 2 lanes on the west side of the street there, and that they actually funnel down into a merge right at the point of where the community health center would be, a little bit further south down the block. And that, so really it was already the case that whatever traffic was turning left into those 2 lanes was going to have to merge anyway in a very short period of time. So I do think that's kind of noteworthy to consider. And I think that council considered that and discussed it. Director Sylvester, did you have a point that you wanted to add?
Yeah, Mr. President, thank you. I just wanted to clarify one point. I think Mr. Graham is talking about northbound left as well. You're correct about your statement southbound, is that previously it was 2 lanes that would funnel into 1 lane as you get into the residential neighborhood on Bell. But just to clarify, the left-hand turn lane will remain going northbound. There'll be a left-hand turn lane, and you can go straight in that lane down Bell on that jog, or you'll be able to turn right onto Detroit. And then we'll have to navigate how to do parking on that side of the street too.
Thanks. Okay. Any other additional comment, questions from council, et cetera? We have a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 9000-18. Hearing none. All those in favor of adoption say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 3, Resolution 900118, a resolution to enter into a purchase agreement with Robert Dobush, owner of the property located at 16021 Madison Avenue, for valuable consideration, including the settlement of all outstanding claims against Dobush for the demolition of the structures that formerly stood on that site and was commonly known as the Hilliard Square Theater.
Thank you. Again, I would note that this item is addressed in the Committee of the Whole report from May 14th, at which it was recommended for adoption, and I therefore move to adopt. Second. A motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to adopt? I just reiterate that I'm very glad to see this at this point in the process. This is a very, very long time coming for that neighborhood, arguably decades. At least 30 years, I think, that it was closed, and then before that, not a gem of the neighborhood either. So This is an unfortunate end, certainly to the building, but a great beginning and new chapter for the community in that neighborhood, and getting to kind of hopefully self-determine in some ways what could possibly go on there, and see what the private market looks to bear on that site. So, any additional comment or questions?
Yeah, Mr. President.
Yes, Vice President Anderson.
Looking back over the years of Saga, you know, it's you look at this one way: either it's the beginning of the end or end of the beginning. I'd like to think that this is the beginning of the end, but it's a good end, and I'm looking forward to the next, hopeful one of the last chapters on this saga. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any additional comment or questions? Hearing none. All those in favor of adopting 9001-18, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, that motion passes.
Item 4, Ordinance 2518, an ordinance to amend Section 110502 of the zoning code by changing and revising the zoning map of the city with respect to 1456 and 1470 Warren Road from C4 Public Schools to C3 Commercial General Business.
Thanks. Here again, this is, I believe, a little bit addressed in my May 14th Committee of the Whole report, but Council, when considering this last week, had, I think, a great discussion and ultimately determined that there were some additional answers and opportunities to ask questions that the Council desired. So ultimately, this was referred back to Council this evening without a recommendation, one way or the other. And that was also done so that rather than have it lingering in Committee of the Whole, we could hopefully address those concerns tonight on the floor. As is noted, for this project to move forward timely and for the Board of Education to ultimately be able to move into their space on schedule as anticipated, we do need to keep an eye on the clock. So in that vein, Council did ask to speak to either or preferably both a member of the school board and also a representative from Liberty Development. The representative from Liberty Development is here before you tonight. That is, of course, Drew Siley, who will step up to the podium, hopefully, and be able to field some of your questions. I also would note that, as indicated, I did reach out to the Board of Education on this. Unfortunately, as is always the case, they're always meeting at the same time as us on the first and third Mondays. I also reached out to a number of individual board members, and unfortunately, one is currently out of the country, and so they're already kind of hard up for quorum, so to speak. So I think we weren't able to swing an in-person representative from the board here tonight, but certainly independent follow-up or one-on-one follow-up with the board members was encouraged. Board member Faber indicated as such, and board member Einhaus indicated as such as well, and I know that the other board members would be equally receptive to that. So without further ado, I want to turn it over to my colleagues, or I guess I'll give Drew Siley an opportunity maybe to make some brief opening remarks, and then if there are additional questions, we can go from there.
Thank you. Sure. Mr. President, members of council, I appreciate your consideration on our rezoning request. Here on behalf of Liberty Development and the Board of Education, had a conversation with the superintendent before coming over this evening. As you're aware, the proposal we have with the Board of Education, the purchase agreement we have in front of them, is to buy their entire campus at 1456 and 1470 Warren Road. It's about 1.7 acres. It's about 30,000 square feet of building. Under the current proposal, what we are envision doing is the board has currently vacated the 1456, which is the north building, which is the 1879 East Rockport School building. They are going to lease back from Liberty, once we close on the property, the south buildings, which is about 20,000 square feet. We're going to renovate the 1879 building, make that their new board offices. They'll move over into that building, and that will become their new home. I know there's been some question about what is the fate or the future of the balance of the site. The other buildings, we've had these conversations at Planning Commission, for example. We've nominated the north building under the local historic preservation ordinance. It's been deemed eligible. We will ultimately designate that building under the local preservation code. And as far as the 1470 building, the larger of the two buildings, frankly, it's to be determined. But I will tell you the direction we're working currently is to find a solution to renovate those buildings and repurpose them. Without really a lot of effort on our part so far to promote the availability of space, we have tenants that are interested in that building. I can't guarantee that's going to happen. It may, 2 years hence, when the board vacates that space, there may be a scenario where those buildings are demolished. But our preferred project and our preferred direction is to renovate those buildings and repurpose them for office space right on Warren Road. And I'm happy to answer any questions council might have.
Thank you so much. At this point in time, I'd like to recognize any council member who has additional follow-up questions or concerns. Yeah, Councilmember Bullock.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, former Director Siley, now with the private sector. It's good to see you again. I had a chance to talk with school board member Tom Einhaus, and he went to bat strongly in favor of the proposed resolution before us to approve of the zoning, and I understand where he's coming from. It's helpful to hear from the private property owner or the prospective private property owner what you anticipate. Now, I know that you're issued a crystal ball when you enter
yes.
private development, and you're not supposed to tell us exactly what you see, but could you hint? I think you've done a little bit of that already. It's a potential retail. It's not a potential retail, but rather a potential office and/or residential or office use that could play out.
I think the likelihood in repurposing those buildings is for an office use. The buildings, there's two buildings actually. There's the immediate building fronting on Warren was built in 1899, and then there's an additional Grant School building that was built in 1919. Over the last 100+ years, a lot of interesting things have happened to those buildings. Structurally, they're in reasonably good shape. To repurpose them for residential, you can't get very many units just because of where load-bearing walls are. It doesn't tend to lay out very well for residential, but for an office use, it really does have some possibilities.
Good to hear. And I just happened to be noticing those buildings this morning when I was at the post office, and I mean, they're frankly majestic. You look at 1470, it's just as every bit as beautiful on the exterior, mind you. I've not spent a lot of time on the interior as the older property where you've committed to the renovation and historic fate. So obviously from a community point of view, it'd be optimal if that could work out. So I'm encouraged to hear that you think there's a chance. I'm pleased with the responsible approach that your company, your development group is taking towards this. And I'd say to my colleagues what the school board member Einhaus related was, the school board's been working on this property towards a solution for more than a year. They believe that this is a win-win arrangement that would essentially provide new capital through a private sector partner to get a needed renovation so that there's efficiency in use of space, efficiency in utility usage in the future to be renovated wing, and then their needs are met in a manner that doesn't engage them or doesn't require them to engage in public sector debt and all that's involved with that. Since it would be a private sector owner and manager and rehabber or redeveloper, rather like the conversation we just had about the hospital redevelopment, there's the private sector considerations to understand and respect when you're engaged in this kind of an approach. So out of deference to our school board, who certainly is a thoughtful, committed community partner, as well as the good example that Liberty has provided before, I'm planning to support the resolution tonight. This is one additional way by which City Council can be a good partner to our school board partners. We've had a long history of doing that through supporting school levies and bond issues, and through providing financing for the fiber optic project and other shared facility efforts. And so this is a manner in which we can also help them. as painful as it would be if it were to result in the loss of the historic building. So we're very much rooting for your success on the rehab side of things. Thanks.
Appreciate that.
Thank you. Other council members, questions? Yes, Councilman Rader.
Thank you. Yeah, I had an opportunity to talk to board member Ed Favor as well, and he highlighted some of the same points. It was a really hard. They worked hard at working out this contract over the course of a year, and they also put in protections which I was happy about, to protect the Grant School back there. They left like a little bit of a property that's going to remain, or that's going to be either gifted to the school district, or so how does that work between the land there running was it the west end of the property?
So, Mr. President, to Mr. Councilman Rader's question, they replatted the property, so they adjusted the property line to create an additional buffer and incorporate that Victoria extension into the Grant School property. It's just a protective buffer. It also manages the parent pickup circulation for Grant School.
Thank you. So it's clear to me the school board had envisioned, had a lot of vision going into this about what it would be used for. I know they had a strong emphasis on maintaining the, historical, the older building, the south building, or the north building rather, and really pushed hard that the building be repurposed, that the north building be repurposed. So I was very happy to hear that. Can you give me a quick overview about your company, Liberty? What kind of projects compose your portfolio, or what type of things have you completed recently that might kind of fit the mold of what you're trying to do here?
So we have a couple very good examples. Liberty Development's been in business since 1996. We're headquartered in Westlake, Ohio. Recent projects, we're finishing up McKinley Place here in Lakewood. Have one unit left. Should anyone need a townhouse, they'll be available November of 2018. Similarly, the company did the Union Building in downtown Cleveland, which our tenant's Cleveland State University. So it was about a $60 million historic renovation, a vacant building. It was repurposed. It was a tax credit project, and that was done maybe 8 years ago, and Cleveland State is still the tenant.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Other council members, Councilwoman George.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Mr. Siley, for being here. I think it was important for all of us to hear what your thoughts were on that 1470 building. And I'll just say that someone who spent at least 10 summers working at a 1456 for our rec department, I'm really happy to see that building's going to be kept historical, and that it's good to hear your intent is to do the same with that 1470 building. As a historian by nature, I like to keep our historic buildings as much as possible, so I'm encouraged by your answers here tonight. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. I would say for my own piece that I think, in my mind, and other council members have alluded to this, I do tend to show deference to the Board of Education with respect to this decision, not because we're passing the buck, but because the reality is that the community obviously elected those public officials to make determinations as to what is best for the school district, including the school district's property. And moreover, in doing that process, I think they did an excellent job of reaching out to the community, soliciting that feedback, partnering pretty extensively, to my understanding, with the Lakewood Heritage Advisory Board, who we heard from tonight, to do the Historic Preservation Awards. Perhaps Liberty will be a recipient of such an award someday. As well as the Lakewood Historical Society and such other entities who are also very vested in making sure that the historic character and fiber of our community is preserved. So I think in considering all those processes and then layering on our own internal processes with our own board and commission and planning commission's evaluation and recommendation of this tonight, I can enthusiastically support this and look forward and best wishes for a great project.
Real quick follow-up, if at all.
Yes, Councilman Rader.
Thank you, Mr. President. The facade, what is the difference between, being qualified for just the historical preservation of the facade as opposed to the whole building? Can you just briefly, maybe Mr. Director Sylvester here can follow, but can you why just the facade, I guess?
I'm happy to tackle that, and it's likely it's going to be more than the facade. So by contract with the board, because that had the East Rockport School stone, the carving, and the cornerstone, the date of 1879, and that's really the face. They felt that was the most important element to designate. They also wanted to create some flexibility with how the site might be redeveloped. But with the direction we're taking, we're going to, it seems, repurpose the entirety of the original two-story building And so, as we shared with the Planning Commission during our meeting, if that is the case, we're likely that we're going to designate more than just the facade.
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments from council? Hearing none, we have a motion and a second to adopt. All those in favor of adoption say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes. Thank you again, Mr. Siley.
Mr. Quickly, I was told there was going to be cake for Mary Hagan. Is that in fact true, or should I come back?
There is not a cake, but
so that was a lie.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank
you.
you.
You were misinformed.
Thank
Thanks.
you. I appreciate it.
Rum cake, maybe.
Item 5, communication from Council President O'Leary regarding appointing Maureen McHugh-Bach as interim clerk of council.
Thank you, members of council and community members and colleagues. The current clerk, Mary Hagan, as was just alluded to, is retiring at the end of this month. And in light of that fact, attached is a resolution appointing our longtime legislative liaison, Maureen McHugh-Bach, as interim clerk, which will allow for the continuation of the clerk of council duties until such time as council concludes its selection process of a new clerk, which we have posted the position for and have received applications and expect to be moving forward with that expeditiously very soon. So, again, I would commend that resolution to your attention and ask that that communication be received and filed. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to receive and file that communication? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 6, Resolution 900318, a resolution to take effect immediately, provided it receives the affirmative vote of at least 2/3 of the members of council, or otherwise to take effect and be enforced after the earliest period allowed by law, appointing Maureen McHugh-Bach as interim clerk of council.
Thank you. Move to adopt. A motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to adopt? Yes, Councilman Rader.
I just want to highlight that I do feel this is an emergency ordinance. I think it is totally essential to the, our duties as council and for the city. And I also want to congratulate, I suppose, Ms. Bach. It's an appointment, and that's an important thing, so.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the ordinance, or on the resolution, rather? Hearing none. All those in favor of adopting resolution number 9003, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 7, communication from Councilmember Rader regarding community discussion on strategies advancing racial equality.
Councilman Rader.
Thank you. I'll save a little bit of time. I won't read it. I'll just kind of go over my thinking here. So, throughout the election of 2017, I had a chance to talk to a lot of people throughout our city, and it became clear to me, and working in Cleveland too, we were a pretty segregated community, and there's a lot of research that backs that up, and the communication mentions some of it. I just want to make sure that as a government, we're continuing to think about and focus on and work towards, and I know that the Civil Rights Commission is working very hard on this. I know we've passed ordinance in the past with regards to anti-discrimination, but I want to pull some people together, and we have something on the books. I wasn't on the books by the time I put this on the docket, but it is now. It's going to be June 2nd at 3 p.m. right back there. We're going to meet with some leaders from the NAACP, some people from Black Lives Matter, a couple other groups, to just think about what areas we might still have to improve in our city. Where are those places, and maybe some strategies around improving them. And one of the first topics we're going to talk about was actually brought up by the Housing Network, which would be part of that. The Cleveland Housing Network would be part of that discussion, is source of income discrimination within housing. So just to start a discussion, I want to welcome the mayor and anyone from the mayor's office to join us, and any of my colleagues to join us, and as well as members of the public. If it ends up being a lot of people, we're probably going to have to create like a public section and keep the actual panel to a kind of a minimum of people so we can actually get some work done, but would certainly encourage members of the public to join us. So that's about it. So thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Summers, did you have a comment?
Thank you, President Leary, members of council. In the spirit of your comments, I want to bring your attention to a session this particular Wednesday. It's hosted by Lakewood Alive at 7 p.m. at the Lakewood Library. It's entitled Embracing Diversity. So there'll be a forum similar to one I suspect you were talking about this particular Wednesday. Also on June 24th, which is a Sunday, from 6 to 8 p.m., Lakewood resident Vince Franz will be leading a discussion on the regional conversation sponsored by the Cleveland Foundation on Common Ground. And it's a similar vein that you're referring to as well. It's at the Women's Pavilion, and it's a second year of a regional dialogue of which Lakewood will be participating as well, about what our sense of place is and how we can improve it by connecting and comparing our experiences. And I also, lastly, on this recent May 15th, we had a landlord training session that focused exclusively on fair housing. But that's not the only time we've done that. Actually, over the past 25 landlord training sessions since 2011, at least 20 of them have hosted fair housing education for our landlords, and that's another important piece of the puzzle. And I remind us, too, that we have a commission that deals with these issues, Lakewood Community Relationship Advisory Commission, led by Chairs Rachel Donaldson and Jessica Sloan, plus 11 other members. And they would be very interested in understanding how they can engage with this group in discussions as well. And finally, Joe Labazzo, Lakewood High School teacher, has created a race and diversity club. I'm sure he would be anxious to participate as well. So the good news is there's a lot of conversations similarly that are already happening, and I hope that we can harmonize this.
Thank you. Move to receive and file that communication. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to receive and file? Any further discussion, I should say? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 9, communication from Mayor Summers regarding NOPEC Inc. Energized Community Grant for LED streetlights.
Mayor Summers.
Thank you, President O'Leary, members of council, members of the audience. Pursuant to your approval of Resolution 8986-18, accepting the NOPEC Energized Community Grant to the amount of $216,474, I've worked with the Public Works Department and the Planning Department to analyze several projects that would be eligible for the NOPEC grant money. According to NOPEC policy, eligible products include those that reduce electric and/or gas consumption through facility improvements. The goal is to leverage these grant monies as best we can on projects that meet our city objectives and the goal of sound governance while complying with NOPEC's policy. As a result, the proposed project is to transition from legacy street lighting, which include high-pressure sodium and mercury vapor lighting, to LED street lights, which will result in future energy savings and a projected time frame for a return on investment. This is particularly focused on Madison and Detroit. The project will use a portion of this year's NOPEC grant to the amount of $106,855. The funding will enable the city to work with First Energy to transition the existing high-pressure sodium street lights to high-efficiency LED street lights on the commercial corridors, Detroit and Madison. The high-efficiency lights are manufactured by GE and will be obtained through the LED street light pilot program that First Energy has. The estimated yearly energy savings gained from the replacement of a total of 355 street lights is an annual savings of $25,973. The LED systems are proven technology that provides high-quality, reliable lighting at a significant cost savings to the city. The projected time frame for the return on the city's investment is 4.01 years. So we have a choice. Council could take this as a recommendation and refer it to committee, or if there's no objection, we could proceed with it. It's your call.
Thank you. To that point, I will move to receive and file that communication from Mayor Summers.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. And to the mayor's point, I would open the floor to council members for their feedback on whether we should refer this to committee or, I guess,
or we'd go ahead and apply to NOPEC.
Sure.
For this
Law Director Butler, would that have to be done by separate motion of council as opposed to? I guess I'm. Yeah. Based on the communication, I don't know if there's a formal authorization that needs to happen, or if this is, frankly, simply a notice.
We've already agreed that we're going to meet the policy. We want this money. Your vote affirmed that. The question now is how to spend it.
Right.
And so this is a proposal.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Vice President Anderson.
Do you anticipate this being a reimbursement to city funds that need to be spent in advance, or is this paid down as we get the bills in?
The way NOPEC has structured this, I believe it's a reimbursement, that we will spend the money, they will reimburse us, $106,000.
And the actual folks doing the work, are these city employees, or is this a contractor?
Actually, good question. I know Director Beto couldn't be here today. If there are First Energy lights, very likely we could install them. Do you know that detail?
I believe First Energy will actually handle the installs. I think they're required to.
Okay.
For clarity, I believe I heard at the Resiliency Task Force meeting that I attended that the install cost is part of the $301 per head that is built into that. So that the install would not be an additional cost to the city.
That's correct.
And then my last point, Mr. Chair, to the mayor, is that next to the last paragraph indicates that the projected time frame for return on the city's investment is 4.01 years. This really isn't a city investment. I mean, we're investing time, effort, and energy in a project, but it's not our resources that we're going to be reimbursed.
It's no
and there's no
money.
clock hours that we're really spending time and our employees doing this versus something else.
It's no PEC money. We're charged to invest it in a way that makes sense. By investing it in this way with their money, we will basically save $25,000 a year for years and years to come. So I view these as a matter of course of let's use this money, let's invest it to yield results. What are those results? A financial return is one of them in this case. Now, the other thing that's important is will be a different kind of light. It's probably the future, and it gives our city an opportunity to get to know what this light looks like, because it's, and you can tell the difference between a sodium vapor light and a mercury vapor light. So this will be a third type of light, a little clearer, a little brighter. It'll be on our commercial corridors, and as a consequence, it'll give us an opportunity to evaluate that aspect of it as well.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. Yeah, I should note, in addition, that to the mayor's point there, with the lights being a little bit brighter, it's certainly, a financial investment for the city. It's certainly an environmental investment for the city. It's also, to that point, I think, a public safety investment for the city. I've heard that these cameras, or should say the light that these cameras, or that the bulbs, the new bulbs would give off, actually enhances the functionality of the cameras that we already have installed. So that's another compliment. Any additional comments or questions? Yes, Councilman Bullock.
Thanks, Mr. President. So a couple thoughts. One is it's a good project. We've talked about it before. Glad to see that we may really get some traction on implementing efficiency and in pretty significant stretches of the community. There's enough interesting specifics there that I think it would be worthwhile to get a briefing on the project. I don't feel the need to hold up the approval of it now, but if we can, get a description of what the work is, when it's being done, who's doing it, who's maintaining it. Those are all factors that are relevant and would deepen our understanding. And then how many more miles of potential street lights we have in front of us. I do think color temperature will be something we get community comment on. Is there a fixture opportunity here? Probably not in the scope of this project, but we just started to scratch the surface of light spill over standards, and I've come to understand that the decorative lamppost in my own front yard is in violation of dark sky glare recommendations. So as soon as I can find the time and muster the skill sets to swap out the head on that thing, I should get something that glares less at my neighbors. Cobra head lights are what they are. We're probably not contemplating in this project a redesign of those things, but those are questions that we probably ought to bake into our thinking.
I think we consider this as a first step. Now, this does leave a balance of about $110,000 for us to continue to evaluate how we want to use that money. So we have some other ideas as well. But
we do, at least speaking in the royal we, in the spirit of marriages across the pond. There's still, I know, live conversation with the planning department about what may or may not work. And so it's my intention to carve out some time to do some personal analysis, but we have a study for the city vehicle fleet alternatives analysis sitting there waiting for us to really dig into it and take the first steps towards implementing it. This could be a pool of funds that could help us get underway on that. I know that's been on the electric vehicle side pending, and I don't get the sense that we have clarity on or a verdict on that. So, if we're agreeing to commit half the funds from the NOPEC grant to this worthy purpose, it means that there are fewer resources for other worthy purposes. We're already well into May, so I think it makes sense to get going here. But it's a topic of importance and of significant interest, so I'd like to continue to engage on what we can do with the other half.
Thank you.
So maybe there's a public works deliberation about all of these things, but you know, I don't feel the need to hold up the project tonight.
I would be, I obviously can't speak for Public Works Committee without a formal referral of some kind, but I'm sure that Chairman Rader would perhaps entertain such an update or a briefing. You know, if that is problematic at all for the Public Works schedule, I'm sure that we could entertain such a briefing at some mutually convenient time in Committee of the Whole. So either case, I think, works for me, but Councilman Bullock's point about the need and appropriateness for council to stay engaged on these issues is well taken, I think.
I think there's, thank you, Mr. President. I think there's flexibility within our schedule, if that's something you'd be amenable to.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. We have a motion and a second to receive and file. Any additional comment from council? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 10, communication from Law Director Butler regarding Lakewood Park concession lease with Help Foundation, Inc.
Thank you. Law Director Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The ordinance that follows this communication is an ordinance that would permit the Help Foundation to pick up where Cornucopia Inc. left off at the end of last year in providing concession food service to the patrons of Lakewood Park. The Help Foundation acquired Cornucopia. It's a Cleveland-based foundation, and as you know, Cornucopia ran Nature's Bin for many years and continued after Nature's Bin closed to run operations on Sloan Avenue in their facility after their merger with Help Foundation in 2017. They continue to run those operations on Sloan Avenue, and the Help Foundation now wants to provide the concession food service to patrons of our park in 2018, and in fact wants to begin this holiday weekend. So the administration, in support of Help Foundation's request and in an acknowledgement that the Help Foundation, or that Cornucopia did a tremendous job last year in bringing high-quality foods to the park where they had not existed in the past, we support this ordinance and ask that council consider adopting it this evening. Now, I'm speaking on behalf of the mayor, who was out of town when we introduced this last week to the docket, but I commend the ordinance to your attention and ask for any deliberation on the floor tonight.
And Nancy Pepler is with us tonight, who can provide details about last year and the expectation of this year.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Pepler, for being here. And I apologize for the late hour, but really appreciate your time.
It's okay. The Cavs are up 10-14 at last check.
Thank you very much for that update.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of council. We were certainly pleased with our experience last year at the park. And for those of you who don't know, Cornucopia provides employment training, support, and services for persons with disabilities. And we do that in part by preparing food at the former McDonald's on Sloan Avenue. And when we were invited to consider operating the concession stand at Lakewood Park last year, we weren't really sure how it would go. We knew that the quality of the food that we could provide to all of your residents would be very good, but we weren't sure how operations would go and whether people would receive the offerings that we had. And we had just a fabulous experience. Both the patrons on the pool side and on the park side, after the renovation of the playground, were very positive and supported us greatly. I think they appreciated knowing that they were prepared. The food was prepared by people with disabilities who are being trained to cook and work in the field. But they also just appreciated good, healthy food. Although my staff who were there joked that most of the 10-year-old boys were really upset that we weren't selling more Skittles. On the pool side, we did get a lot of that feedback, but we did have some great experiences. One thing I want to mention is we also had a partnership with Sweet Spot, for example. We're looking to partner with other Lakewood businesses. Sweet Spot and Cornucopia, we prepared ice cream sandwiches that we sold, and those were a big seller. That was a really nice partnership that we're looking to continue this year. So as the law director stated, we were acquired through an acquisition on March 1st from the Help Foundation, which was founded here in Lakewood. Our corporate offices are in Euclid, but we're all throughout Northeast Ohio. Cornucopia's 501c3 still exists, and all of our staff, save one, remain, and our training sites remain, and our kitchen remains there at Sloan Avenue. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, and thanks so much again for the background and for all the great work last summer.
Thank you.
I can personally attest that many of the concession items are wonderful. So, any council member questions or comments? Yes, Councilmember Litton.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Ms. Pepler, for being here. Also enjoyed the concessions last summer. I'm curious if the lease has any major material changes from the previous year, the previous agreement, either from Nancy or from Director Butler?
Nope.
Other than name changes?
We clarified that our tenant would be responsible to replace any broken appliances within the facility, but that's it. That had always been our expectation. It just wasn't as clear in last year's lease.
Thank you. And then I was just curious if there will be any opportunities moving forward to employ clients.
Well, last year we had some clients who came over from the kitchen and worked on the cart, selling the food, going out throughout the park, selling it on the cart. And this year we've reached out to the County Board of Developmental Disabilities about having a part-time job coach work with up to 3 people with disabilities doing that, because one of the things that we felt that we didn't do as good of a job of as we would have liked is having the cart rotate throughout the park. And so our plan is to have up to 3 people working throughout the park, people referred to us by the county board throughout the summer.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone, any other council members, questions or comments? Again, just really thrilled to see this program and the great folks at Help back again in Lakewood this summer. And happy to consider it this evening so that those of us who are out in the park this weekend can get our first taste. So.
And this weekend we're planning to start with a cart and then open with the full concessions once the pool opens on June 8th.
Great, thank you. We have a motion to receive and file that communication. All those in favor of receiving and filing say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 11, Ordinance 2818, an ordinance to take effect immediately provided it receives the affirmative vote of at least 2/3 of the members of council, or otherwise to take effect and be enforced after the earliest period allowed by law, authorizing and directing the mayor to enter into a concession lease agreement with Help Foundation, Inc. for the operation of food concessions at Lakewood Park pursuant to Section 15508 of the Codified Ordinances.
Move to adopt. Second. A motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to adopt?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
We'll need to suspend the rules, please.
Yes. Thank you, Law Director Butler. Move to suspend the rules. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. Madam Clerk.
Anderson? Bullock? George?
Yes.
Litton?
Yes.
O'Leary?
Yes.
O'Malley? Rader?
Yes.
Thank you. That motion passes. Move to adopt. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to adopt? Hearing none. Madam Clerk.
Anderson? Bullock? George?
Yes.
Litton?
Yes.
O'Leary?
Yes.
O'Malley? Rader?
Yes.
That motion passes. Thank you all.
Item 12, communication from Law Director Butler regarding ordinance adding finance processes to the code following passage of the third amended charter.
Thank you. Law Director Butler.
Mr. Chair, I'm very happy to report, particularly for Councilwoman George's benefit, that following this communication is the last of the ordinances that the Law Department will be introducing, carrying forward the certain items in the second amended charter that were not carried forward into the third amended charter when we streamlined the third amended charter. These relate to financial processes that were in the old charter and that probably deserve mention in the code. So I'd ask that the ordinance, as with all the others, be referred to the Rules and Ordinances Committee for consideration and deliberation moving forward. There's no timeliness issue on this particular ordinance.
Thank you. Move to receive and file that communication. A motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to receive and file? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 13, Ordinance 2918, an ordinance enacting various sections of the codified ordinances of the city in order to codify certain provisions with respect to financial processes in the city.
Move to adopt. I'm sorry. Move to refer to Rules and Ordinances. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to refer to Rules and Ordinances? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 14, communication from Law Director Butler regarding resolution adopting Foundation Planning Task Force recommendations regarding Healthy Lakewood Foundation.
Thank you. Law Director Butler.
Mr. Chair, the resolution that follows this communication would carry forward the recommendations of the Foundation Planning Task Force made earlier tonight in your Committee of the Whole meeting, and so we would ask that the resolution that follows be referred to the Committee of the Whole for further discussion.
Thank you. Move to receive and file that communication. A motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to receive and file the communication? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 15, Resolution 900418, a resolution to take effect immediately, provided it receives the affirmative vote of at least 2/3 of members of council.
Or otherwise to take effect and be in force after the earliest period allowed by law, adopting the recommendations of the Foundation Planning Task Force for the creation of the Healthy Lakewood Foundation, the appointment of its initial board, and the approval of its initial governing documents, all in accordance with the master agreement governing healthcare in Lakewood dated December 21st, 2015. I would move to refer Resolution 9004-18 to Committee of the Whole. Second. A motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to refer to Committee of the Whole? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes. And that brings us to our 16th item, which is an add-on. That's the Planning Commission report regarding 1375, 1379, and 1381 Fry Avenue rezoning. Director Sylvester.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of council. I'll be brief. I won't read this into the record. First of all, thanks for hearing this tonight as an add-on. At its May meetings, the Planning Commission and Architectural Board of Review at their respective meetings have approved the final plan development plan for the property at 1375, 1379, and 1381 Fry. This project's known as the Muse at Rockport, and we are prepared to go to a committee of your choosing, potentially Committee of the Whole, to discuss the project in more detail.
Thank you. Move to receive and file that communication. Second. Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion on the motion to receive and file that communication? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, that motion passes.
Item 17, ordinance 2318, an ordinance to amend section 110502 of the zoning code, the codified ordinances of the city of Lakewood, by changing and revising the zoning map of the city with respect to certain property as set forth and described as 1381 Fry Avenue, 1379 Fry Avenue, and 1375 Fry Avenue, from C3 Commercial General Business to PD Plan Development.
Thank you. Move to refer to committee of the whole. A motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to refer to committee of the whole?
Mr. President?
Yes, Councilman Bullock.
I know I'll get the full answer later on, but just to pique my curiosity, why I can't remember why these are vacant properties. They look to be vacant on Google Earth. And secondly, in the plan development as drafted, there's not a lot of consolidation. Same difference, or why not consolidate them? Or you can get that, you can achieve that same end through the plan development process anyway. So it doesn't, it's 6 one, half dozen the other.
Yeah, and that, good question, Councilman Bullock. On the first one, we'll get into that into much more detail. The short answer, it was originally envisioned as part of the larger Rockport project, and then Forest City held it back for reasons that Bill Sanderson can speak to at our next committee, at the committee of the whole meeting. And then on the lot consolidation piece, I'm not sure I understand what you're asking there.
If I may follow up
Sure.
briefly.
Yes,
So the reason I don't remember it being occupied was because since I've served, that whole Rockport Square development has been demoed. So were these 3 properties formerly part of the car dealership, I believe, that was there, or?
No, I think they were actually independently owned residential structures.
I'm just mostly curious, you know.
That Forest City acquired over time.
Okay.
Chief, I don't know if anything to-
There were 3 residential structures, and they were torn down because one of them was set on fire, and the fire damaged all 3 of them.
Okay. And so then, the adjoining property owner, who was a developer with an active development, acquired that for potential addition, which never actually happened, it sounds like. My question was, if you're going to, if the proposal is to develop a campus of 9 townhomes, there are 3 parcels there that will all be involved in a single plan development, which will presumably work in some integrated fashion. This is mostly zoning law trivia. I'm curious about why wouldn't the proposal be either from the city or the developer to consolidate those lots into a single triple lot, and would the city care one way or the other?
Yeah, I got you now, Councilman. The lot consolidation and then subsequent lot split, similar to what happened at Rockport and then McKinley Place, will happen at a future date. And it'll be closer to when they're ready to transfer the project. So that ultimately will happen.
So will there ultimately be a proposal for 9 separate lots?
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
With the homeowners association attached to the rest of the property.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Any additional questions or discussion on the motion to refer to committee of the whole? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All those opposed, that motion passes. And we actually have one more add-on item to our docket this evening. If you'll humor me for just a moment, we have Resolution 9005-18, a resolution to congratulate Mary T. Hagan on her retirement after 30 years of public service to the City of Lakewood in the City Council office. Whereas Clerk Hagan began her public service career in 1988 as clerk typist in the council office, where her hard work and dedication were recognized and rewarded with several promotions culminating in her being appointed clerk of council, a position which she has held capably for nearly 2 decades. And whereas during her years of service to the council office, Clerk Hagan has steadily guided the council office through many changes in administrations, technology, policies, and practices, served dozens of council members, helped hundreds of residents, and professionally represented the council office both inside and outside City Hall. And whereas Clerk Hagan's service has been characterized by dedication, care for her community, the highest ethical standards, and a very unique and much appreciated brand of humor. And whereas this council, the administration, and many members of the public will sorely miss this camaraderie, hard work, and years of institutional knowledge for which Clerk Hagan is known, now therefore be it resolved by the City of Lakewood, Ohio, that this council recognizes and thanks Clerk Hagan for the extraordinary length and quality of commitment she has made to the City of Lakewood and the City Council office over the course of her career, that it is with bittersweet sentiments that we bid farewell to Clerk Hagan and wish her many relaxing years ahead, unburdened by docket deadlines. That the Clerk of Council be and is hereby authorized and directed to transmit this resolution to herself, and that a copy of this resolution be spread upon the minutes of this meeting. Thank you. And we have, of course, our ceremonial resolution here, which we're all frantically signing, as well as a couple other very small tokens of our appreciation for your many, many years of wonderful service to the community. I move to adopt.
Second.
A motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to adopt?
Mr. President.
Yes, Councilmember Bullock.
It is definitely underscore the bittersweet. Mary, we will be forlorn and lost without you at our next council meeting. And I thank you for everything you've done. And you've been a constant and a steady presence, a professional who's fairly and effectively and accurately and precisely done the work of council. And so it's kind of been an unimaginable moment to think of actually crossing over. So, but let's not worry about us on our end. Let's thank you and wish you well as you enjoy and take the next steps in life's adventure. And thank you very much for all you've done.
Any other members of council on the motion to adopt? Hearing none? Or I'm sorry, Councilwoman George.
Yes.
Hearing everybody, I think, is actually what happened. Hearing everybody all at the same time. Councilwoman George.
I just want to also thank Mary for her 30 years of service to Lakewood and to council. And I'm one of the newbies here with Councilman Rader, but I'll tell you, in this short time working with you, it has been amazing. I've loved your dedication, and that amazing sense of humor cannot be replaced. So you will be very, very much missed. And the City of Lakewood is extremely lucky to have had 30 years with you.
Thank you. Councilmember Litton.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mary, you've always been overly kind. You fall all over yourself to help with anything we should ask. You're respectful of all views, provided they're not, authoritarian in nature. and given that by my last count you have at least 4 siblings in Ward 3, we expect you to be no stranger to the neighborhood.
Thank you. Councilmember Rader.
Yeah, thank you. I've not had you've been blessed to have the opportunity to get to know you as some of my colleagues have, but just over the last few months, it's been an honor. And I really wish you the best. And congratulations. And, enjoy your retirement. And I hope that, yes, as Councilman Litton said, you're no stranger to us. Come back, and, you certainly left a great legacy.
Thank you.
Councilmember O'Malley.
Thanks. Just briefly, Mary, I know a number of us had an opportunity to celebrate with you at your retirement party here in this room a few weeks ago. But just want to thank you for your many years of service. It's an inspiration, and your hard work. And there have been many times where I've, in the last few years, frantically called you at the deadline or after the deadline, and or needing something very quickly. And you were, you saved me on many occasions, and we'll miss you dearly.
Thank you, Vice President Anderson.
Yeah, thanks. I don't know where this picture came from, but it's there. Do you remember taking this picture by chance? Do you remember somewhere in...
My ID,
Your ID from, yeah. I think it was in our file. Maybe the numbers have been whited off.
We all know what she did to get there.
Yeah.
You are in stripes there.
Exactly. I don't know how many times over the last 7+ years I've called Mary and asked her when the docket deadline was. I always go, when's the docket deadline? And she's always patient. She said, well, it's on this. I still don't know when it is. At any rate, and then all the times where I would come in and just to grab my mail, and you're there working, and you're trying to work, but I'd sort of interrupt you, and we're talking about all things authoritative and not. But I certainly appreciate your dedication, not just to us, but to the institution. I mean, it's always about the sticklers of process for Mary, and I appreciate that. But she's also incredibly warm, funny, engaging, and dedicated public servant, so I appreciated the opportunity to work with you over the last almost decade or so. So thank you for everything.
Thank you. I won't belabor my own points much beyond the resolution, but I just want to add my own personal thanks, of course, for everything that you've done for me, for the council, for the city. It's an incredible legacy of service that you're leaving, and so many aspects of everything that you bring to the job will be incredibly missed. So thank you.
President O'Leary, just
Yes.
if I could comment on administrations current and past.
Yes.
In moments of great confusion and doubt, always the answer was, go ask Mary, she'll know what to do. So we're going to be at a loss as well.
It sounds like a consulting gig. Is there
If I were you, I wouldn't, but
I would like to, first of all, thank the public for allowing me to, retire at a relatively early age, although my health is probably about 95. But especially, it's nice working for bosses who are nice and treat you, eye to eye. And because you don't always have that in bosses. And I appreciate my former boss, Mayor Summers, who, sat up here, who was helpful to me, too, as the mayor during some, helping me with my mistakes, and especially Kevin Butler, who, although you didn't get all my mistakes, you really, helped me so much. I will definitely miss everybody here. Tony, my good friend. Jen, everybody here, just thank you very much. Maureen, I'm sorry. And Maureen. Boy, you know what? I know they say this a lot about, young people coming in. Maureen, or I say it a lot, I'm sorry. Young people coming in and not, being the kind of people that are not following through or not doing, God, Maureen is one of those stellar people that truly, knows how to be a worker. Okay, sorry.
Don't apologize. And I do think that the public owes you that retirement after taking several years off your life, probably over the past 30. So without, I guess, any further discussion, we have a motion to adopt pending. All those in favor of adoption say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That motion passes. Yeah, I'd like to bring everybody down for a quick picture. We do have one individual signed up for public comment, so we'll do that shortly.
Yeah, you just click it.
Thank you. We gotta get you in
Want
there.
to do it right there? And other duties. Well, I couldn't walk after that. Okay. Yeah, that would be good. All right. 1, 2, 3.
Okay, well, that truly does bring us to the end of our docket agenda for this evening. As mentioned, we do have one individual signed up to speak, and that is Ed Graham. After Mr. Graham, we'll have our traditional announcements and then adjourn.
Thank you. Just three brief things. First of all, Mary, I don't know if the council member to your right is aware of the fact that her father was instrumental in your getting to be the clerk of council when I was a council president. And I give you my congratulations. Number two, the street light issue. Perhaps if we have enhanced street lighting, this might be beneficial in cutting down on the break-ins and the car thefts that seem to be flourishing too much in our city. And then the third thing, if you add $50 million to $30 million, you come up with, I hope, $80 million. That's the money, cash money, that we lost with this hospital issue that has been terminated on technical matters in the Court of Appeal. The city's hospital had $50 million in cash. The Lakewood Foundation had $30 million in cash that should have gone to the city, but was given away by the city government. It's time to stop giving away city assets. So looking prospectively, I would hope that this council comes to a realization that their job is to make the city work, not to give away its assets. So, and I'm just mentioning some cash. I'm not even talking about the millions of dollars of hospital equipment and the millions of dollars of real estate at underbid prices. So looking prospectively, you have a chance to do the right thing this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that brings us to the end of public comment for this evening. We will now open the floor for announcements from council. I don't want to steal the administration's thunder, but I'm personally looking forward to meet the trucks on June 2nd. Any announcements from the administration?
Actually, just some good news. We just received a notice from the Department of Housing and Urban Development regarding our block grant funds. For the last really 15 years, we've looked at a decline year in, year out, especially the last 7. This year, we're actually, we've been informed that our grant funding is increased by $200,000. So there was a point where we thought this was going to go to zero, and that this was going to be eliminated as an item of investment by the federal government. In fact, had been proposed several times in the last several years by Congress. So in the budget that was approved on March 23rd, 2018 by the federal government, they maintained these funds, and by the formulas they apply, we will increase from $1,974,000 to $2,174,000. So $200,000 increase. So that's a step in the right direction. First we've seen in a very long time. So that's great news for our community.
Thank you. Law Director Butler, do you have an announcement?
I don't.
Oh, okay.
Thanks, no.
Thank you.
I was only going to point out that you have to, the mayor is excited about this announcement, but we have to meet in the DMZ in order to collect the check.
Understood.
We'll go.
Yeah. Thank you. Any additional announcements? Hearing none, and there being no more further business before council, I move to adjourn. Second. A motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to adjourn? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.